Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to completely shift your perspective on something you do every single day without even thinking about it. Seriously, we're taking a fundamental part of your daily routine and revealing how it's actually this radical, relatively brand new experiment in human history. Okay, let's dive into this.
Picture this. You're in your bedroom right now. The door is closed, the lights are off, maybe your partner's next to you, or maybe you're totally alone. But either way, nobody can see you, nobody can hear you. You are completely, totally invisible to the outside world. I'm willing to bet you've never once thought of that state, that physical isolation, as a technological invention. But you know what? That is exactly what it is. The kind of privacy you're sitting inside right now is actually one of the newest creations in the entire history of the human species. It's newer than agriculture, it's newer than the wheel, it's actually even newer than written language.
I mean, just look at that number, 290,000. For 290,000 years of human history, the exact moment you might be experiencing right now, being totally alone behind a closed door, wasn't just rare, it was literally physically impossible. Our current walled, closed-off lifestyle, that is the historical anomaly. And the absolute strangest part of all this? The people who lived every single day without our kind of modern privacy were not suffering from its absence. We are. Part 1. The 50-foot rule. Life in a human school bus. So what did ancient humans actually do with zero privacy? For daily life, for sleep, for, well, everything else that makes us human. To understand the reality of the human experience before agriculture, we have to look at this fascinating 1992 study by Oxford anthropologist Robin Dunbar. He synthesized decades of field observations from forager societies all over the globe, and his ultimate finding? For the first 290,000 years of human existence, the entire radius of your life was roughly 50 feet. And that's not a metaphor. The average hunter-gatherer band maintained near-constant physical proximity. You spent most of your waking and sleeping hours separated by fewer than 50 feet from everyone else. To put that into perspective, that's essentially the length of a standard yellow school bus. So try to imagine what life actually looked like inside that invisible circle. 15 to 50 people were living every single moment of their lives together as one absolute unit. They slept together, they ate from the exact same fire, they traveled together, there were no assigned spaces, there were no dividing surfaces, and there were definitely no walls. If you had an argument with your partner, guess what? 40 people heard it. If you were sick, 40 people knew before you even opened your mouth. And here's the detail that's absolutely crucial. This applied to everyone. It wasn't just the condition of the poor or the unlucky. The strongest hunters, the most respected elders, they lived exactly this way too. No one had physical privacy because the concept literally did not exist.
Part 2. Privacy without walls. The architecture of agreement.
Which obviously begs the question. How on earth did human beings cope with this intense, constant proximity without completely losing their minds? Well, this brings up a profound paradigm shift. Ancient humans didn't build privacy out of stone or wood or mud. They built it out of agreement. It was a shared decision about what people would and would not acknowledge. Back in 2014, University of Toronto anthropologist David Sampson completed a massive study of sleep patterns and social behavior among the Hadza people of Tanzania. Now, the Hadza are one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer populations whose way of life closely mirrors pre-agricultural humans. And what Sampson uncovered was this incredibly highly sophisticated social contract.
Let's move to and see how this builds into actual daily practice. Sampson documented 3 specific behaviors that were so remarkably consistent, they essentially functioned as unwritten law across forager societies. These are the 3 pillars of ancient privacy: timing, distance, and collective silence.
Let's break these down. Step 1 is timing. When the communal fires burned low at night and natural light disappeared, the social contract of the group quietly shifted. The darkness wasn't just physical cover to hide in, it was a shared signal. Everyone understood exactly what that signal meant, and everyone mutually agreed to behave as though others simply were not there. It was a conscious, collective shift in awareness.
Then comes step 2, distance. Moving just 50 to 100 feet away from the sleeping group in near-complete darkness was understood without a single word ever needing to be spoken. Because in total darkness, without any artificial streetlights or anything like that, 50 feet is functionally invisible. Sampson's cross-cultural synthesis found this exact same pattern across every single documented forager group he examined, from the Hadza in Tanzania to the Agada of the Philippines and the Aceh of Paraguay. The strict rule was universally understood by everyone: you move and absolutely no one follows.
And that brings us to the third and honestly the most sophisticated step of all, collective silence.
Anthropologist Colin Turnbull lived with the Mbuti people of Central Africa for years, and he documented this beautifully. He noted that the Mbuti actually had no word for privacy, not because they were unsophisticated, but because the behavior itself required no word. It was simply understood. You do not comment on what you did not see. It wasn't the silence of people who don't know what's going on. It was the deliberate silence of people who have actively agreed not to acknowledge what they clearly know. Ignoring what you knew was the ultimate form of granting someone privacy.
Part 3. The agricultural trade-off. The birth of mine. So these three behaviors were the brilliant architecture of private life for almost 300 millennia. But then, everything shifted. Around 10,000 years ago, humans began farming. And farming meant staying in one place. And staying in one place meant building walls. Just look at this timeline to really get a sense of the scale here. For a massive 290,000 years, we've got open, communal forager living. Then, a mere 10,000 years ago, farming and the very first walls appear. And remarkably, the common private bedroom as we know it today, that really only became a standard thing about 100 years ago. It is just astounding how recently physical separation actually entered the human story.
So the crucial point here is what happened when we made that jump from open communal living to walled domestic spaces. In 1996, Cambridge University archaeologist Ian Hodder published a landmark analysis of Çatalhöyük. That's a 9,000-year-old agricultural settlement in modern Turkey, and it's one of our earliest known examples of permanent human housing. What he found was totally unexpected. The transition to walled spaces surprisingly correlated with a measurable increase in interpersonal conflict. We're talking about tool damage consistent with fighting and skeletal trauma from violence between individuals. Building those first walls wasn't some grand liberation. It was actually a really heavy trade-off.
Why did this happen? Well, because walls created the concept of mine, and mine meant someone else could take it. That concept of territorial ownership had never really existed before in daily human history. The walls gave people separation for sure, but they also gave people something to defend. And it's really important to remember that even after walls appeared, actual privacy remained a rare luxury for millennia. In medieval Europe, entire families shared a single room. Travelers at inns would routinely share beds with total strangers. Even as recently as the 1800s, children sharing mattresses with 3 or 4 siblings wasn't a sign of extreme poverty. It was literally just normal life.
Part 4. The cost of walls. The modern loneliness crisis.
It wasn't until around 1920 that the modern private bedroom you woke up in this morning finally became a common feature of ordinary life, which means getting everything we thought we wanted came with a massively unexpected consequence. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is just how stark the reality is visually. Look at that tiny sliver. 99.97% of human history was spent without modern physical privacy. A mere 0.03% of human history contains the private bedroom. We are living in a microscopic, totally experimental fraction of human time. And in that tiny 0.03%, something started happening to us that had never happened before.
The irony of our modern achievement is, quite frankly, staggering. On the one hand, we have the absolute triumph of privacy. Today, the average adult in the developed world has the most physical privacy ever. We spend more time alone than any human being in the entire 300,000-year history of our species. We have perfected walled separation. But on the other hand, in the exact places that achieve this pristine privacy, the World Health Organization is now classifying loneliness as a global public health crisis. People are reporting fewer close friends than at any point in recorded history. Depression, anxiety, and social isolation are steadily climbing. We got exactly what we built the walls for, and we are more disconnected than ever.
Let's just slow down for a second and really process this comparison. Earlier we mentioned the Mbuti people, who had absolutely no word for privacy. But you know what they did have? Hundreds of words for their vital social bonds, for every role, every relationship, every connection within their group. That is what they needed to name in order to survive and thrive. Contrast that with our modern vocabulary. Today, we have hundreds of words for different types of specialized rooms. We've got bedrooms, living rooms, offices, studies, dens. But we completely struggle to name, let alone manage, the profound isolation we feel when we're sitting alone inside them. Ancient humans never had a door to close. They found ways to be private without ever being isolated. They built intimacy not by separating from the group, but by completely trusting it. And then we built walls. We built them to protect ourselves, to protect our connections. But as you look at this final question, ask yourself, we built walls to protect connection, but did we forget what we were protecting?
The next time you close your bedroom door and turn off the light, think about the 290,000 years of human history that never needed that wall to feel secure. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep questioning the things you think are just normal, everyday life, and I'll see you next time.